Hello everyone. As you can see, today's a bit of a different kind of video. It's just me sitting here talking at you with my face. And basically it's about what do you want on a competitive team? Now, as a CCL coach who's involved with the draft and the players we're going to be picking up, and I'm doing some scouting, people have been messaging me, what is it that you are looking for in a player? What can I do to prove to you that I deserve a chance to be on the team? And what I'm looking for in a player doesn't change depend if it's a pro team or an amateur team. It's the same things. It's just a question of degree. At a pro level, the standard I'm looking for is higher, but the criteria are not. The criteria are the same. It's just the standard I'm going to hold you to gets progressively higher as you climb up the ranks, which makes sense. First thing is the ability to self-assess. The ability to self-assess is really important. If you tell me that you can play Tyrael, and then you play Tyrael versus Joe, and then you don't play the matchup correctly, I assume A, you can't play Tyrael, but B, I assume that your ability to know if you can play a hero is flawed. And now I can't trust you when you say you can play any other hero. If you say you can play a hero, you need to know those heroes' matchups, you need to be good at those heroes' mechanics, you need to talent differently based on matchups. So if I see you, do something that is clearly wrong and makes it so that the hero that you're supposed to be countering has a free game instead of being countered, that's awkward. So that's a game knowledge thing. At a low level, I'm like, I don't care. Because at a low level, what counters what it is actually very different because the level of play is lower, and specific matchup things get misplayed so often that what counters one is actually very different. And that applies even at the high level. The famous example that I always use is Illidan versus Dehaka in HGC. In NA, Illidan won the lane, and in EU, Dehaka always won the lane. And there was just literally one little difference. So there's a level there. Now, if you tell me you can't play the hero, if you tell me I don't know that you don't know the matchups, that's good. Then I won't be critical of you. But your ability to self-assess, the ability to know that you don't know something, the ability to know that you can't play a hero is really, really critical, because it's easier to work with someone who knows they don't know things. It's far easier to coach someone who knows they don't know something and sort of help them achieve a standard of play that is reasonable for that hero. The second thing is just mechanics in general. Now, most ladder players will have mechanics. If you've hit GM, I'm going to look at the heroes you've played GM on and be like, okay, I know you have good mechanics on those heroes. Number two, though, is being able to have mechanics while talking and while listening. So comms. Now, comms is actually a really easy thing to evaluate, to be honest. Because I'll go into an in-house and I'll hear someone make a call. I'll hear someone be like, oh, we need to go to boss now. And I'll watch someone continue to do a camp. And I'm like, that person's not listening. I don't want that person on my team. Nope. And, same thing. Maybe you see someone rotate. You see someone leave your lane. They're mid and someone dies and you didn't say anything. You didn't say that they left the lane. No, well, so you're not talking and you're not listening. Now, if you do talk and listen, if you do those two things and your mechanics get worse, I don't want that either. You need to be able to talk, listen, and play your hero to the standard that I have already set. If you can't communicate in this team-focused game and still play the game, that's a no. And, this is an issue that's working. Sometimes the issue is hero-specific. I've worked with a number of offlane players who didn't have good comms on Rexstar or didn't have good comms on TLV, and it's something they had to work towards because those heroes require more attention. It's something you need to be able to achieve. And the best way of showing that you can achieve it is playing a comfort hero and showing that you can have comms. So the ability to self-assess, know what you don't know, the ability to play at a high level, and then the ability to talk while playing at a high level. In addition to that, attitude is something that I personally look for. If you're just like a basically negative person, that just makes everything harder. I think of negativity as like a weight that gets put on a team, and the team's trying to climb. Now, they can still technically climb if they're a strong team, but why are you making it harder on yourself? Why would I intentionally recruit someone who is going to make team getting better a harder process instead of an easier process? So a positive mindset, growth mindset, a good attitude about failure. Because there's like two kinds of failure, right? There's not knowing something, and there's knowing something but not doing it correctly. So let's say there's a perfect opportunity for Johanna to engage on someone, and she throws Blessed Shield, which she's supposed to. It's correct. The person's out of position, damage is in range. Everything about that Blessed Shield was fundamentally correct in terms of thought process, and it just missed. A good player, like a good teammate, will be like, that's fine. You'll get it next time. Or good try. And they'll just focus forward. They won't be like, why'd you miss that Blessed Shield? We could have won this game if you just missed that if you just hit that Blessed Shield. They'll focus forward. They'll be like, okay, Blessed Shield's down. We can't engage for 60 seconds. What do we do? What do we do next? And they'll be like, good try. And after the game, they won't hold it against the person. And when someone hits the Blessed Shield, you might be like, man, that was such a good team fight going on. I'm of a mixed opinion of this. With the team fight still going on, maybe you don't be like, oh, that was so awesome. But sometimes something was pretty pog. So those are the major things that I'm looking for, regardless of the team. Those are the major things that I'm looking to fix if an amateur team wants to be successful, so this is not just a matter of pro level play, this is a matter of, I've worked with amateur teams who had a player who could only play 3 heroes. And they weren't like all in the same role. And drafting around that player was really hard. So they would just force him to play heroes he wasn't good at, but then they would lose, right? That's not really that player's fault. Play the heroes you're good at. But be honest. I had a situation the other day where I was playing with someone and I asked what they played and they were like, oh, I'm a range player. They played Tass and Li Ming. They didn't play ranged. They played 2 heroes, Tass and Li Ming, both of which are sort of like burst mages. And that's very different. In a drafting environment, that's a very different thing than I'm a range player. A range player can generally, my mind goes to hyper carries and auto attack. The heroes that pair with double support, it's totally fine. One example. There's like countless examples. So know what you can actually do. Be honest about what you can't do. Listen, talk, have a good attitude, and have good mechanics. That's it. That's all I'm looking for. And if I have 2 players with all of those things, I'll pick one that has more of something, right? But that's the baseline for what you as a competitive player should be looking to achieve, regardless of whether or not you're a CCL player or amateur player. And the only difference is the standard you're going to hold yourself to, right? So for a Muradin, an amateur player who doesn't have good mechanics, he hits 50% of his storm bolts, and some of them are, not correct to have thrown at all. That's actually pretty good. That's actually pretty good. If you're a CCL player and you hit anything less than like 80% of your storm bolts and like 90% of them are correct to have thrown, that's a good standard, right? So we went from 50% to 80%. We jumped. There's a significant gap between these 2 standards. I don't know if this is a good video. I'll just send it to Zane.